The Galactic Tribunal's broadcast reached every civilized world. Billions watched as Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres was marched onto the barren surface of Zerath 7, humanity's punishment for losing the trade war. The Galactic Council had been clear. One human would face the Void Stalkers, and humanity would learn its place. The Void Stalkers were the galaxy's nightmare-made flesh creatures that had evolved in the space between stars, feeding on radiation and tearing through hull metal like paper. No species had ever survived an encounter. They were death incarnate, used by the Council as executioners for the gravest offenses. Rachel stood alone on the cracked obsidian ground, her environmental suit the only thing between her and the toxic atmosphere. The Council's observers watched from orbital platforms, their cameras capturing every moment for the galaxy to witness humanity's humiliation. The sentence will now be carried out. The adjudicator's voice echoed across the cosmos. May all lesser species learn from humanity's arrogance. The first Void Stalker materialized from the shadows, a writhing mass of translucent flesh and impossible angles, its 1,000 eyes focusing on the lone human. Rachel didn't run. Instead, she slowly removed her helmet. Gasps echoed through a million viewing halls. The toxic air should have killed her instantly. But Rachel had a secret the Council never bothered to investigate. She'd grown up on the mining colonies of Titan, where children played in methane storms. She'd been part of the Deep Space Scout program, where humans learned to adapt their biochemistry to survive anywhere. The Council saw humanity as weak newcomers. They never realized humans had been preparing for hostile environments since they first looked at the stars. The Void Stalker approached, its psychic scream designed to shatter minds. Rachel winced but stood firm. She'd felt worse during her mother's funeral, when grief had threatened to tear her apart. Human minds weren't just fragile things. They were adaptable, capable of turning trauma into strength. She raised her hand slowly, and the creature paused. Its 1,000 eyes blinked in sequence, confused. No prey had ever faced it without fear. "I know you're hungry," Rachel said, her voice calm despite the creature's proximity. "I can feel it. You're not monsters. You're just predators in an ecosystem that can't sustain you anymore." The Void Stalker's tentacles, each capable of punching through starship armor, wavered inches from her face. Rachel reached into her pack and pulled out something that made the Council's observers recoil: raw plutonium, enough to kill any carbon-based life form. She offered it to the creature like a treat. The Void Stalker's feeding appendages emerged, delicately taking the radioactive metal. It consumed the offering and made a sound no xenobiologist had ever recorded, something almost like a purr. "That's it," Rachel whispered. "You're not so different from the wolves our ancestors tamed. You're just looking for a reliable food source." More Void Stalkers emerged from the dimensional rifts, drawn by their packmates' unprecedented behavior. The Council watched in horror as Rachel fed them all, these apex predators of the void gathering around her like curious puppies. Over the following hours, the galaxy witnessed something impossible. Rachel didn't just survive, she communicated. Using a combination of radiation offerings, mathematical concepts scratched in the dirt, and an understanding of pack dynamics that came from millions of years of human evolution alongside predators, she began to establish rudimentary communication. The Void Stalkers, it turned out, were sapient. They'd been trying to communicate for eons, but no species had ever survived long enough to listen. They weren't mindless killers. They were desperate, starving creatures whose dimension was dying, forcing them to hunt in real space. By the time the Council's enforcement fleet arrived to investigate why their execution was taking so long, they found Rachel sitting surrounded by dozens of Void Stalkers. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were letting her scratch behind their dimensional flanges. "Humanity requests an amendment to our treaty," Rachel announced, standing as the fleet commanders watched in stunned silence. "We'll take responsibility for the Void Stalker population. In exchange, we want full Council membership and mining rights to the radioactive waste worlds you've been trying to dispose of." The Council had no choice but to agree. The alternative was leaving humanity in alliance with their greatest nightmares. Within a year, human Void Stalker patrol ships became the most feared peacekeeping force in the galaxy. The predators that once haunted space lanes now protected them, fed and cared for by the species everyone had underestimated. The galaxy had watched her die. Instead, they witnessed humanity's greatest trait, the ability to make friends with anything, even death itself.